Good morning. This morning, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor John Daugherty, who is very happy to be back at our church sharing his talents with us again. Dr. Daugherty is an assistant professor, baritone, and opera program director at the University of North Florida. He continues to enjoy an active performance and recording career, which includes opera, song recitals, oratorio, performing repertoire drawn from a wide array of genres and styles. Professor John Daugherty, thank you so much for coming back to us. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you. Our opening words this morning are from Christian Schmidt. Let us wake up, not just from the Sunday morning exhaustion, from the wish for a few more drowsy minutes in bed. Let us wake up to this world we live in, to its beauty and wonder, and also to its tragedy and pain. We must wake up to this reality that not all in our world have what we do, however much or little that is. We must wake up to the idea that our wholeness, our lives, are only as complete as the lives of those around us, of those we are inextricably tied to in a great web of mutuality, of which all of us are part. We must #stay woke, in the words of our friends and colleagues involved in Black Lives Matter, working every day for racial justice in our country. Let us wake up. Let us stay awake. Let us #stay woke. And now, in this time and place, let us worship together. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our call to worship. The words are printed in your order of service. I'd like to officially welcome you to Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church, or BBUUC. My name is Alyssa Halliday, and I'm happy to be your worship leader today. As Unitarian Universalists, we walk the path of love. We do this through compassionate and just interactions with each other, confirming with each step on the road our own and others' worth and dignity. Our path is guided by our principles and purposes, which can be found on the back of your order of service. As we are all navigating through this wondrous journey of life, I am grateful that you have chosen to be here with us today. I'd especially like to acknowledge any guests that came out to join us on this beautiful Sunday. If you are a new visitor, we warmly welcome you to our beloved church. If you'd like to learn more about our church or Unitarian Universalism, we invite you to check out the literature on the back table near the door. We continue to adjust our worship services to accommodate the safety and well-being of everyone while living through this pandemic. We invite you to stay for fellowship and refreshments after the service, which will be served today in the back kitchen area. I now invite you to stand in body or spirit and join together in singing our opening hymn, which may be found in the gray hymnal, number 298, Wake Now My Senses. Now I'd like to invite Liz Baldwin up to illuminate our chalice. Our chalice words today come from Linda Pastan from her poem, Imaginary Conversation. You tell me to live each day as if it were my last. But why the last, I ask? Why not live each day as if it were the first? All raw astonishment, Eve rubbing her eyes awake that first morning. Thank you, Liz. At this time, I'd like to invite Chris Jarman, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, up to the front for our Time for All Ages.
Good morning. So, I have some volunteers who had volunteered to come and help with the Wonder Box today. Can I have my volunteers, John and Julia and Jenna and Christina? Thank you. I also need 2 more volunteers. Do I have anybody else that would like to volunteer this morning? James, come on down, friend. Thank you, James. Anybody else? Oh, come on down, friend. Good morning. So today you might notice there's nothing in the wonder box, but there is something different about the front. What do you see that's different? That's not usually there. What do you think, John? Palm fronds, you're right. So they're there because I want to share with you today a story about Palm Sunday. So right now, Miss Alyssa is going to help me, and she's going to give you each a palm frond. And I'm going to ask that you spread out across the front, and when I ask you to, you'll wave your palm fronds. Okay? James, you can stand right over here. Just right down there. You can stay on the floor. You're going to stand there? That's fine. Christina, thank you. How about we have one more person come up? John, do you want to come up here? We'll have like matching bookends. Awesome. Thank you. So, long ago and far away lived a great teacher. And he was a great teacher because of his simple message. He believed that it was important, what was important about religion is that we love our God with all our hearts, with our whole hearts, our whole self. He also taught that it was important, that the important thing in life was how we treat each other, that everything comes down to that. Have you guys ever heard that before? Something about treat others the way we would like to be treated? Yeah, that's a teaching from our great teacher. Now, he traveled through the land and shared his stories and taught all of these simple lessons. And people began to follow his teachings. And they began to follow him. And they were called disciples or the apostles. They would go from town to town sharing the message of love and acceptance. Not just with princes or kings or rich, fancy people, but with people maybe that didn't have a home or were poor or were sick. And this great teacher's name was Jesus. And he was from a town called Nazareth in the land of Judea. A really big important holiday for Jesus and his apostles was Passover. And they decided that they would like to go to Jerusalem, the big city, to celebrate Passover. Now, they didn't have trains or cars back then, but even if they did, Jesus and his apostles would not have taken a train or a car because they were poor. So Jesus and his followers walked. They walked very, very far. And when they arrived in Jerusalem, they stopped outside of the gates. Now I'm sure that when Jesus went to Jerusalem, he knew that he would find trouble. See, he would have to be fierce and he would have to be brave and have big amounts of courage because the people had begun calling him their king. And of course, people in power wouldn't be happy with a new king. Do you think they would be happy? No. Jesus and his followers walked and walked. And finally, when Jesus was tired from all the preaching, he decided to send his disciples to get a donkey so that he could ride into the city. A donkey was a humble animal, a symbol of peace. And of course, the people heard that Jesus, the great teacher, was coming, and they began to wave palm fronds and flowers in the air, saying, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming. Can you wave your palm fronds? Because they were celebrating. Palm fronds were a symbol of victory, a symbol of triumph. So here was Jesus riding into town, knowing that he'd be facing some challenges, that it would be very dangerous, but also knowing that the people felt that it was a victory, that love was winning over oppression, and that teaching that everybody was worthy was more important than staying away. Jesus came into the town and he was welcomed with palm fronds and the flowers and the cheers and the celebration. Of course, we know how the story ends. It's not a happy ending. But for Jesus, facing the challenges, facing the fear, was worth everything. living in love, having the courage to do what he believed was right, was worth it all. I wonder, can you think of a time in your life when you felt challenged or even scared to do what you knew was right? Did fear stop you? Or were you able to push through the fear with love? I wonder what would be possible if we all found courage by embracing love with our whole hearts and with our whole selves. What would be possible? And with this, our story is told. And I invite you to remain in your seats and to sing the children out to RE with hymn number 413, Go Now in Peace.
Take from 70 springs a store, it only leaves me 50 more. And since to look at things in bloom, 50 springs are little room about the world, whence I will go to see the cherry hung with snow.
We take an offering each Sunday to give our material resources with generosity and gratitude. No matter how much money you put into the plate, The act of giving is a symbolic reminder that giving is just as important as receiving, that sharing what we have is how we live out our value of generosity. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that generosity of spirit and deepen our sense of giveness. You can find giving envelopes in the hymnals. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. I'd like to invite our ushers for today, Ted Clisby and Donna Zimmerman, to come forward to accept the offering. After the offering is complete, please stand in body or spirit and sing our offertory hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. I'm delighted to introduce to you today Pastor Phillip Baber. Phillip is the pastor of the People's Church of Jacksonville and the regional director of the Poor People's Campaign of Northeast Florida. He is the former pastor of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Jacksonville and a former co-president of iCare. Phillip's ministry is dedicated to the advancement of our collective liberation, leading him to advocate in support of criminal justice reform, police accountability, racial and economic justice, justice for refugees and immigrants, and LGBTQIA+ rights. Phillip, it is always a pleasure to have you in our pulpit.
They went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter and James and John and began to be distressed and agitated. And he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake." And going a little farther, he threw himself on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. He said, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I want, but what you want." He came and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour? Keep awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. He came a third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough. The hour is come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up. Let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Per the Christian calendar, today is Palm Sunday, as Chris did an amazing job of explaining. And so Palm Sunday marks the beginning of Holy Week, which is a commemoration of the last days of Jesus on earth. And I'm also aware, of course, that it is the month of April, which this year, per the Unitarian Universalist Soul Matters curriculum, has a theme of awakening. And so therefore, as someone who has ministered in both Christian and Unitarian Universalist contexts, I thought today I might offer a message that combines these two areas of focus. So yeah, we're going to do a mashup today. We're going to do a mashup of Holy Week and Awakenings. And the biblical passage that I just read to you seems to me to be, an obvious point of intersection. It's a relatively well-known episode among Christians, but for those here who are not familiar with the story, let me give you just a little context. And by a little, I actually mean a lot. But I won't take up too much of your time, so this will be incredibly broad, but it will also be incredibly shallow. And again, Chris preached half of this already, so she already did, part of my job today, and I'm so grateful for that. But all right, here we go. Quick and easy, quick and dirty. So 2,000 years ago, there's a guy named Jesus. Deeply polarizing figure. He's a country dude, backwater redneck, or whatever the dark-skinned Palestinian Jewish version of a redneck might be. He's charismatic, though. He is an amazing preacher, yet another in a long line of Jewish prophets who gets into trouble for speaking truth to power. And like the prophets before him, Jesus critiques troublesome aspects of his own culture and religion, and he also preaches against the foreign power occupying his homeland, in this case, the Roman Empire. He gains a reputation as an exorcist, a healer, a miracle worker, which actually isn't that unusual because lots of people were doing this kind of work back in Jesus' day. Additionally, Jesus starts to gain a reputation as a possible Messiah candidate. Now, no one knew exactly what this mysterious so-called Messiah figure would end up being, but the most popular theory at the time was that the Messiah was going to be a warrior king who would lead a military overthrow of the Romans, thus liberating the Jewish people and reestablishing the old Davidic monarchy in Palestine. The closest analog for Americans might be George Washington. So that's what most Jews of the day were expecting, Jewish George Washington. Now, there were actually many Messiah candidates both before and after Jesus, so once again, this actually does not serve to set Jesus much apart from many of his contemporaries. Anyway, so this Jesus guy, he goes around the countryside preaching, teaching, healing the sick, building up chatter that he just might be the Messiah. And he does this for about a year. And then finally, Jesus starts the fateful march to Jerusalem. Bright lights, big city. Jerusalem is the center of everything for the Jewish people. It's like New York, D.C., and Los Angeles all rolled into one. So Jesus, the hayseed redneck country preacher, is about to hit the main stage with his entourage of nobodies and social outcasts. He enters the city on Palm Sunday, which again, that is today. Today is when Christians celebrate Palm Sunday, which kicks off Holy Week. And a lot happens during this week, which I will not get into right now. now, but around Thursday night, Jesus shares a final meal with his closest friends and disciples. But one of them betrays him, snitches to the authorities. Jesus gets arrested. He is tortured and executed by the state because he is a threat to the Roman Empire. And today, about 1 billion people believe that 3 days after his execution, Jesus came back from the dead, resurrected on Easter Sunday. That's your context. Now, the passage of Christian scripture I shared with you at the beginning of this sermon details what occurred immediately following the so-called Last Supper. Jesus retires with his disciples to a garden. He takes his closest 3 disciples, Peter, James, John, and he asks them to keep watch with him, to stay with him, to hold space with him as he prays a gut-wrenching prayer. You see, Jesus came to Jerusalem with the intention of causing a ruckus. And by ruckus, I mean a nonviolent protest in the temple where Jesus yells angrily, destroys a bunch of property, chases money changers with a whip, Indiana Jones style, and almost starts a riot. Jesus came to Jerusalem to do precisely this, to get arrested and then to be tortured and executed by the state. The reason he does it all is because he believes in his heart that this is God's will. It is the divine plan. And so now, mere moments from when he is about to be apprehended, as he approaches the finish line of this terrible race, he is scared. He is losing resolve. He is sick with fear, and he is begging God for a way out. And he has asked his very best friends in the world to be with him and to pray with him. And they can't. They fall asleep almost immediately. Jesus wakes them up, asks them to try harder, but they fall asleep again. Jesus wakes them again. They fall asleep again. They fall asleep 3 times. This is a big deal. Whenever something happens 3 times in the Bible or in mythology or in literature, it's a big deal. You see, the number 3 is meant to emphasize and signal to the reader that whatever is happening, this is important. Pay attention. So why did Jesus' closest disciples fall asleep 3 times in his hour of greatest need? Here's my theory. And it starts with understanding how the disciples are depicted throughout the pages of the Gospel, specifically the Gospel of Mark, which is the source of the passage I read earlier. I love the Gospel of Mark. I'm leading a Bible study on it right now. It is my favorite Gospel. And one of the more fascinating aspects of Mark is his treatment of the 12 disciples, who would go on, of course, to become the pillars of the new religion that would spring up shortly after Jesus' death. You see, the Gospel of Mark portrays the 12 disciples as complete idiots, which is super weird. You would not expect the sacred scripture of a religion to depict its founders and original leaders as being bumbling fools. It's really quite shocking. Here is but one example. As recorded in the Gospel of Mark, during his ministry, Jesus explicitly tells his disciples he's going to die soon. He tells them this not once, not twice, but 3 times. That magic number once again. And they don't understand. It's not that they don't believe it. That's one thing. That's not it. They don't understand it, like the concept, like the words coming out of Jesus' mouth. They just didn't get it, and they didn't get the fact that they didn't get it. Their inability to have even a basic comprehension of this seemingly simple statement made by Jesus 3 times, it's so bizarre that it's actually comical. And the reason why they can't understand Jesus is this. They believed in their heart of hearts that Jesus was the true Messiah. And what Jesus was telling them about his future was absolutely, positively antithetical to everything they had ever been taught about this Messiah guy. The Messiah was supposed to deliver a military victory over the Romans, reestablish the throne of David, and rule over a restored Jewish kingdom. Not get caught by the cops and die before he can even raise a sword. Jesus' idea of who he was so far outside of their idea of who he was, the disciples could not make sense of it. It did not compute. Thus, they were also incapable of understanding Jesus' seriousness, his sense of urgency, his visceral suffering and agony in the garden. And so they literally fall asleep to highlight the fact that they have been metaphorically asleep this whole entire time. They were sleepy little dudes. They had been sleepwalking through their entire discipleship of Jesus, and they had no concept of actual reality because they were trapped in a dream, a beautiful dream handed down to them from others. And this is high irony, because the reason the disciples joined Jesus in the first place is because they believed that everyone else, all their fellow countrymen, countrywomen, and country folk, they believed that everyone else was asleep. So the disciples joined the movement of the prophet who was going to wake them up, because that's what prophets do. They wake people up from their slumber, from their dreams, to see the true nature of things as they really are. And this is not just an ancient Jewish idea. Think of Plato and his allegory of the cave, Buddha waking up under the Bodhi tree, Baudrillard's theories that form the basis of the Matrix movies. The role of the prophet is to wake people up, move them to the real from the unreal, and inspire them to respond accordingly. That's what Jesus was doing. And that's what the disciples thought they were doing too. They thought they were seeing actual reality because they thought they had already been awoken. That's the irony, because it turns out they were still asleep. And so, this, I believe, this right here is one of the profound messages of the Gospel of Mark. The hardest people to rouse from sleep are those who believe they are already awake. The Gospel of Mark is a warning to all of us about the danger of the false awakening. Now, if you're not familiar with this term, I'll share this short definition from Wikipedia. A false awakening is a vivid and convincing dream about awakening from sleep, while the dreamer in reality continues to sleep. After a false awakening, subjects often dream they are performing daily morning routines, such as showering, cooking, cleaning, eating. It happens in the movie Inception, if you've ever seen that. With all of this as prologue, I'm guessing you may see the point I'm driving to today. I'm speaking right now to a room full of people who probably very much believe they are awake, which is not unusual at all, because everyone believes that they are awake to some degree or another. This is normal. Everyone believes that the conclusions they have drawn about reality and how they should therefore respond to that reality are based in truth and therefore both rational and ethical. But I think it is important that every single one of us, no matter who we are, no matter what our spiritual or political orientation may be, it is important that every one of us regularly check in with ourselves, examine ourselves, ask ourselves in a spirit of humbleness that scariest of all questions: what if everything I know is wrong? What if everything I believe is a lie? And I think that this is especially hard for Unitarian Universalists, because so many UUs pride themselves on being rational, on making decisions based on objective reality. Much of the Unitarian Universalist identity is centered around being a statistical religious minority, being a people who chose a way of being and living very much at odds with the general population, which thus invites marginalization. In other words, Unitarian Universalists pride themselves on being awake, on being an oasis of awokeness in a sea of sleepers. And this is an easy view to take because everyone else is so clearly wrong, right? I mean, especially in Florida. My God, the governor, the legislature, Florida man, of which there's like 2 million different varieties. I mean, come on. They're obviously asleep, right? And so if I can see that other people are asleep, it must mean that I am awake, right? That's actually very bad logic. Because if you're asleep, then your perception of others is also an inward projection of your own subconscious creation. But my point is, for a variety of reasons, it is incredibly difficult to admit to yourself that you may have spent a very long time following the wrong star. Worse yet, because of your own illusions, you may have inadvertently pointed other people in the wrong direction too. There's nothing I hate more than realizing that I have been very wrong about something very important for a very long time. I hate that. And if you are anything like me, I'll bet that whenever you are faced with that situation, you too are tempted to find a way to make sure you were always right to begin with. I'm going to go out on a limb this morning and I'm going to make a prediction, one that may not make me a lot of friends, but I'm going to predict that for every person seated here today, there is at least one very important thing in your life that you are absolutely, completely wrong about. Wrong in a way that is actually causing you harm or robbing you of a rewarding experience that you deserve to have. It could be a political belief, a religious viewpoint. It could be the way that you see another person in your life. I don't know what it is, but trust me, you're wrong. You just don't know it yet. So, to a room full of people, including myself, who are dead wrong about something, I'd like to share a poem. I think that this poem is for us today. A Ritual to Read to Each Other by William Stafford. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. We live in a world of illusions. of lies and errors created by others before us. We must consider that the world as we have known it is concealing something more real and more true beneath the surface. Let us therefore live an examined life, and let us periodically, regularly, religiously examine that life again and again and again. If not for ourselves, for others who follow behind us and may lose the path because of an inadvertent falsehood we passed along. Now, more than ever, it is important for awake people to be awake. Amen, and blessed be.
Thank you, Phillip. I now invite you to stand in body or spirit and join together in singing our closing hymn, number 205, Amazing Grace. You will notice that there's a special note on this song offering a different word choice. Please feel free to sing whatever word is most comfortable for you. When we are finished, please remain standing for the benediction and the chalice extinguishing. So nice. Please remain standing for the benediction. I'd like to call Liz back up, please, to extinguish the chalice. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. May it be so. Thank you for being with us today.